welcome to this session. Thank you for joining us. I'm sure that we have people from all over the place, and do put in the chat about where you're speaking from, as it were, where you're located from. I am called Darlin. My name is Darlin, and I'm the chair of three great groups in the BCS, and they are called London North, London South, and London Central branch, and they are full of IT specialists, IT interested people, and some of them you'll see on this session. For example, my colleague Diana, you can see, hopefully you can see her picture there. Likewise, I have David, who is our secretary for Central London branch. He's going to be the technical controller for this session. But whilst I'm admiring all the distant places that you, our audience, come from, I ought to tell you a little bit more about our speaker, because he's located in the USA, in Connecticut, and he is speaking to us like, well, from me anyway, in North London, like he's 2 doors away down my street. I hope he's just as clear to you. His technical expertise is undoubted, and his material might be a little bit beyond you. Oh, I'm speaking for myself here, but it's well worth hearing, well worth looking through afterwards, and then learning more for your purpose, for your own purposes, work purposes, etc. The material Ulf is using is mostly in one of his books, and he's going to tell us at the end of the session about his books, and hopefully also about a great discount code you can use to obtain his books from Amazon or wherever. So with that, let me hand over to Ulf Mattsson, the Chief Security Strategist of Protegrity. Ulf, over to you.
Thank you very much. About 25 years ago, I moved from Europe to US. So I'm now in the New York City area in Westport, Connecticut. I spent a lot of time in London, and today we have your London weather. So in Connecticut, we had a couple of days with fog, rain, and wind, a little bit colder, and I like that. So I used to work at IBM 25 years ago in Europe, and IBM didn't want to do what I wanted to do, so I started a new company after 25 years ago. So my company is focusing on data security and more on AI. So I will talk a lot about AI today. And if I start with kind of a summary, I would say nearly 80% of company executives say they are developing AI and seeing a value from it. So I will spend a lot of time on that. And then I want to go into data protection, because with machine learning and AI, you need to protect the data. And so I will talk about different practical data protection models, including pseudonymization, anonymization, tokenization, encryption, and more. And of course, since we are in US and Europe, I will talk about GDPR and what is happening with GDPR, because over the last couple of years, we had issues with SRAM 2, and now we have more coming on. So I will talk about that. Let me talk a little bit about newer things with AI. And I think it's very exciting with generative AI. So what is that? It's all about using AI to generate, mainly generate different new context. So you can have different types of documents, and you can ask, okay, give me a summary of these documents. You can have different type of content, and you ask, give me some kind of different representation. Give me images, and so on. So I will talk a little bit about that. And as we know, OpenAI is a very powerful way to achieve this. And I think from a legal point, it can be a little bit challenging because you don't know what the data came from, copyrights and so. And one way to look at it is a Microsoft approach. Microsoft is saying that they will cover your copyright. I mean, maybe not all, but some of the copyright issues. So when we look at a couple of examples with generative AI, first one is legal. It can help you to generate contracts. Second one is finance. It can simplify data analytics, but also allowing human language query and do some reporting. Third one is marketing. You can speed up the generation of different type of text, press releases, collateral, and so. The big one, I think, is development. So number 4 is development. So it can increase developers' productivity by maybe 40%, 40%. That is significant. How can that come? I have a handful or more examples. You can actually use it for unit test coverage of existing code. That's interesting. You can use it for defect detection. You can use it for documentation, code documentation, and for example, source code comments. Next one is code reformatting and optimizing for efficiency and clarity. One thing I'm concerned about is generating code, because it may not generate secure code. Similar to a human, the code may not be secure, and you cannot rely on secure code generation or reformatting. Next one is, next use case is increase the speed of learning of different frameworks, new technology. And I think it's interesting because we're having too many frameworks now for developers to dig into. We have more and more APIs and SDKs for developers to use. So it can provide help in explaining those APIs to developers. Next one is visualization of complex systems and diagrams. And personally, I think having a visual view of different systems, it can help you to quicker understand what's actually in these systems. And the last one is code translation from one language to a different. I'm a COBOL expert, but many people are not COBOL experts. So you can use this technology to actually translate into something that is also makes sense even if you are not a COBOL expert. Another completely different area is operations. So you can actually use this technology to automate and analyze the workflows. Workflows are very important. So generative AI can help you to actually analyze these workflows. I think a main topic of today's session is security. So this technology can actually help you to detect complex attack vectors. And it's becoming more and more secure in a way that if you actually can use this technology to make it more secure, you can be more secure. And attack vectors are becoming more and more complex. Vulnerabilities in software and systems are increasing. So I think it's a big, important sector that we need to analyze and see if it makes sense for us. But next item is support. Support is very important for customers. And it's very hard to train people to provide right support. You may have junior people and more software that they need to explain. So to provide a smart chatbot that can more accurately assist in answering product-related questions will become more and more important. So let's take the next step. I think AI is increasing, getting more and more attention, more important. I think it will not take over people and humanity. Some people are saying that we need to stop. And I think we should not do that, but we need to be more conscious about how can we use AI in a productive way. Automation. I mean, Google is providing some help in finding data, and generative AI is helping more and more to interpret and finding the right data. So I don't think we need to stop, but we should be very conscious. What are the distinctions? We have a couple of terms that we should be aware about. Alexa and Google have NLP. We have different type of analysis, probability. We have machine learning, neural network. I don't want to dig too deep into these, but they are important. We keep hearing about ChatGPT and other LLM, large language models. And they are different ways to help us to translate between text, voice, graphics, and so. And it can be very powerful. So how does it work? It can be trained on, for example, 300 billion words from various sources. It can use a lot of different inputs, and it's a good thing, but it also a question about where did you get that data? So we will talk more about that. You can use it for code development, as we talked about before. You can take a lot of text, a lot of documents, and create a summary and answer your questions. Is it everything? No, it's not. It's for example, if you ask, when was this data accurate? The engine might say that I am trained last year on this data, so it's not accurate for this year, and you should be aware of that. It gives you some kind of insight, gives you the same answer if you ask how to build. Is it reliable and trustworthy? Maybe, maybe not. It's only trained on certain data, so you need to be careful. So what is it? How can we use it? So ChatGPT is like, I would say, a bigger Google search or Bing. So here you can see a couple of different use cases for customer service, sales and marketing, legal and compliance, software programming. And I think we talked about some of these use cases before. What exactly is generative AI? This is one way to look at it. Gartner is saying that you can create this prism of different use cases for video, image, media, audio generation, drug design, material design. So I think that Gen AI will not take over humanity, but it would be a powerful tool for us going forward. And I think that it's confusing to many people. What is it? But it's just a way to use AI and machine learning to generate more context, generate new type of content, different type of content that we talked about. You have a source, you give an input, and it can generate more summarized content for you to quicker learn about a certain set of documents or code or so. So I think it will be very, very powerful. But too many organizations are jumping into the tech and too quickly, and they may not understand the use cases. And if you don't understand the use case, you don't know why you are doing it. So how can you get into an Gen AI? We said, know your use case and know what you really want to do. And if you don't know what you want to do, don't do it. So this is kind of a summary. What Gartner found in these AI projects. Mature organizations involve business partners and software engineers and so. So I think this is a good learning. ChatGPT, pros and cons. You have a couple of different pros and cons that you actually should consider. Some are out of the box, some are trained, and you need to fine-tune before you can use them. Here you have a couple of out-of-the-box model usage, and it's very, very convenient based on some useful results. Context learning. ChatGPT is very useful for. I think when you approach a customer with answers from ChatGPT, you definitely want to tell the customer that this is not a human response. This is a computer-generated response. You don't want to mislead the customer. And of course, you need to take a journey with some training and fine-tune the models. Different apply. You have a couple of different approaches to deploy this. Let me just see if I have some questions here. I have many questions on the chat here.
Or if we can do the questions at the end.
Okay, that's good, because we will cover a lot of more different aspects.
Okay, great.
Thank you. So I think we covered main topics here. And Gen AI, you can take different approaches to deploy it. And this is kind of a chart that is saying that on the left-hand side, you can buy out of the box and just consume it and embed. On the right-hand side, you can decide that you have a company that actually can build different models. You can fine-tune them. You can build from scratch. So depending on what type of company you are, you should consider different approaches. See if I can get my computer going again. So even if you are not concerned about AI today and generative AI today, you should think about the future, because it will come very fast, very powerful. What many organizations are concerned about today is ransomware. Is it going away? No. It's becoming more and more a concern for many organizations. What is, we talked about Gartner a lot in the past couple of slides. What is Forrester saying about ransomware? And they are saying that you can have different approaches to protect or detect, and you need to respond when it's happening, and you need to recover. So there are basic approaches according to Forrester, and there are advanced approaches. And we will talk a little bit about these different approaches. When ransomware modes of attacks are some are frequent, some are not so frequent. And phishing is in the middle, as you can see here. Social engineering is also. At the bottom, you can see weak credentials, stolen credentials. We will talk more about those. Why should you invest? And until you are targeted, you may not understand why you should invest. And Forrester is saying that, well, it can be about your reputation. It can be other reasons. And we'll dig more and more into this further on. Before we dig too deep into ransomware, I would like to talk about what's happening with GDPR and data transfer. Over the last few years, I talk a lot about Schrems too, and what's happening with GDPR, and particularly data transfer between different countries, or, for example, between United States and EU. So I just briefly want to touch on that, what's happening here. There's a privacy framework. It's interesting what's happening with data transfer beyond Schrems 2. We have Schrems 3 that is bringing very interesting new aspects. We had court decisions in France, in Ireland, that is talking about where do you store the data? Where do you keep your encryption keys? And I think it's very interesting to see what they actually ruled as applicable and ways to actually comply, even if you want to transfer data between European countries or EU and for example, United States or other countries. So it's finally moving more quickly now. It's been a long time where we waited to see what should we do, and now we have the EU-US data privacy framework that we should, I think, pay attention to. So courts investigated and resolved some complaints. Very important. And the safeguards put in place by US will also facilitate transatlantic data flows. I think it's good to know and look at those rules. because we have been in limbo for many years now, or a couple of years now. Let's go back to ransomware. So I looked at what different organizations are telling us about ransomware. We have, maybe this is more focused on United States, but at the top we have IC², and they are certifying security people. CSSP, for example. And then you have CSA, Cloud Security Alliance. You have different organizations and agencies at the US that are taking care of these issues and giving recommendations. So on the left-hand side, I would like to talk a little bit about the threat landscape and how to prevent attacks, how to recover after attacks, and how to defend users and resources. At the bottom, I want to, throughout the rest of my session, look more at how to secure data and secure applications. So what I'm leaning on are different types of recommendations from organizations on the right-hand side, and see what are they actually telling us. What about the threat landscape? We know that phishing is concerning. We talked about stolen credit earlier on, and misconfiguration is in many cases important because if you do not configure or have the right policies in your, maybe in your on-prem, but more and more in the cloud, it can be a big gap in your security strategy. And of course, passwords are a concern. How is ransomware priced? An example from NCC Group that are talking about ransomware pricing, and it's good to know. So they are talking about it's maybe I just want to let you read this because it's good to know the pricing strategy, but it may be not very important. Here you can see some smaller companies, what they paid, and sometimes you have insurance policies, and if they know that you have $10 million in insurance policy, they may ask you to pay 10 million in ransom, and it could be an easy way out. Even if your policy is not public, they can easily guess how much is your policy, and they may go after you because you have a security policy, insurance policy, and they may ask to give that amount in ransom. More details about ransomware gangs, and it's becoming more and more a threat. So, preventing attacks. What should you think about? Antivirus, of course, and patching. We know that. Maybe only allow certain type of applications that are authorized, whitelisting apps. And you should definitely block some sites that are known to be ransomware sites. And more. We don't need to go deeper into that. You need to have a recovery plan, because when it happens, it's too late. So you need to plan ahead with a recovery plan. Risk management. We talked about recovery plan, and I think that's very important, because when it happens, you know that you should be quick. You need to know who should you call, what steps should you take, because it's not trivial. You need to know a list of contacts that is current, and what you should do in step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Data security policies. It's critical. You need to defend your resources and users. I would say it's your last resource, last defense resource. You need to protect your data, because these organizations or attackers are going after your data. What is United States NIST saying? National Institute for Security and Technology. They are saying that in that framework they have, and you can see it at the top here, they are saying that this is a very solid framework to protect against any attacks, including ransomware attacks. And you can read the details here, malware, and so it's a good resource to see what can you do, what is the framework that you actually can lean on to have a comprehensive protection, to protect your data, other resources and users. When we talk about different type of data protection, you can see on the left-hand side, you have two-way protection, meaning that you can get the data back. Pseudonymization, typically for identifiers. So you have tokenization, format preserving encryption, homomorphic encryption, and so on. And at the bottom, you can see some are fast, some are slow, some are very slow. On the right-hand side, you can look at how you protect attributes, anonymization of attributes that are not identifiers. And they are typically one-way protection. You cannot get the data back. You hash the data, and you cannot get the data back. You have different type of format preserving models that can be very effective for databases and applications to preserve the format and data types. For example, data masking, differential privacy that is frequently used by organizations like Google and Apple. And you have k-anonymity models that are another way to provide a proof how much security you have. And you can use it for data in transit and data at rest. So at the bottom, you can see how is that linked to zero trust. And zero trust is saying that you should have a data security policy. So we talked about zero trust before. And in that data security policy, you can define how different data should be protected. And depending on the use case, if you have a use case that needs to look at the data again, you go left. Typically organizational systems, if you do not get any, if you're not concerned about getting data back, for example, analytics, you can go on the right-hand side and you mask the data, or you hash the data, or you use different ways to transfer the data for machine learning or analytics. So at the bottom, you can see we talk about the data security policy. And of course, different data is protected in different ways. And you may say that we have a user at the bottom on the left-hand side that maybe not should see the real data. And you can apply dynamic data masking. So in real time, you can say, okay, this user should not see the full data. And you do some masking. So what about risk management? We talked about different models here, and ISO is talking about securing data, and they published standards, actually very form security standards for pseudonymization, cryptographic tools, suppression, and different privacy models. So ISO, I would say, is a very good source to go and look for how do you protect data in different ways. Do I need all of these models? Maybe not. So we talked about different models here before. And maybe we start on the left-hand side and say, okay, I start with some access control. That should be mandatory. And then transparent database encryption. From a legal point of view, I probably want to encrypt my file, my table, my database. So I may want to use transparent database encryption. But it's kind of a binary thing. So if you encrypt your database or file or table, it's binary. Either it's on or off. And some use cases may not be relevant for that because you're exposing too much data too many times. At the middle top, you should use monitoring, of course. On the right-hand side, if you talk about analytics or test data, development data, of course, you should mask, but you can never get the data back again. So you have different use cases. So you need to take the balance and see what's my use case and what is my risk level? How much risk do I want to take? And still being able to perform your business and operational models. So what we talked about here, at the bottom we have data store, and we store different type of data. We store the name, the address, date of birth, and social, and so on. Who should see this data? You have so many different people, from business people to developers and data scientists, and they need to have different policies. So we talked about different use cases for different data. Who should see the different data? Should I implement dynamic data masking to make sure that the right people actually only see what they should see? And then you have tokenization. Tokenization is very interesting because it's a replacement of the data. They can work on tokens without seeing the real data. It's a very important approach. Let's let's go a little bit deeper into different types of protection. Earlier we talked about pseudonymization, anonymization, tokenization, and more. We talked about the left-hand side, two-way protection. You can get the data back, and there are different ways to protect that data. Maybe in a future session we will talk about the differences there. On the right-hand side, we talked about one-way protection. You cannot get the data back. What about cloud and on-prem? And typically, these different approaches on the left-hand side are used for data warehouse. Some are used for centralized environments. Some are used in distributed environments, and some on-prem and cloud. So you can kind of navigate the landscape and see where should I use different type of tokenization, format preserving encryption, homomorphic encryption, masking, hashing. And when you navigate the different type of protections, you can see on the left-hand side at the bottom, typically for data in transit. In the middle, at the bottom, you have protection that is typically used for data in process, data in use, data in memory, data in applications. And on the right-hand side, we talked about data at rest, data in analytics, databases, data in different type of development systems. On the left-hand side, you can see what would these different techniques mean for my risk reduction. So on the right-hand side, you can see different aspects of risk and what these different models or approaches it can help in reducing risk. And then if you go to the middle, you can see different use cases. You can see applicability. So, for example, some of them are useful for direct identifiers. Some are useful for all attributes. Some are useful for local identifiers, and so this is kind of a navigation tool. And at the bottom you can see that this is based on the international standard ISO 28889, and it's a very good standard. It's lining out how should I protect data, different type of data, depending on how I want to reduce the risk. What is this? On the left-hand side, we have our corporate environment that we can control or manage. And then we went to cloud hosting in the middle, and we kind of have a control. Maybe we do not have control about where the encryption keys are or who is accessing the data, and it can be a big problem. But at least we have a contract with them. But we need to read carefully the terms in that contract. On the right-hand side, we have the Wild West, where data is moving out. It could be into a home office. It could be on a mobile device. And we may not know where the data is. So we may think that if we have social security numbers, you can see at the top, we may want to protect that data, encrypt it or tokenize it before it goes over to the right-hand side, because we may not control the right-hand side. So what is Gartner and IBM saying about GDPR? So this is from IBM, and they are saying that in their GDPR security requirements framework, they say that you should take a couple of steps. And when it comes to transforming the data, you should look at encryption and tokenization. So we talked about that before. And to the left, they talk about security by design. Of course, if you have time to build security into your applications, that's good. It will take time, but it's a good strategy. And definitely you should put security by design into your databases. Encrypt data in your database. Tokenize in your database. And of course, if you move left, if you don't know what you have, you don't know what to protect and where to protect. So you need to discover your data. It's a very good framework from IBM. So let me end with this. In my first book, I talked about many of these different techniques and more. So you can get this book from CRC Press. on the right-hand side, you can see my second book. Came out in August this year. I took the next step. And on the left-hand side, you can see where you can find my first book. And so thank you very much.
Thank you. That is indeed a very interesting session. Now, I'm sure that Diana and David have been collating the questions for you and asking those. But first of all, let me give you a virtual clap and ask the audience to join me. Great. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you very much for this whole talk. It's definitely a lot of information, and we're quite happy to have it registered so that people can look at it in more detail and look at each slide more. We already have a few questions, so I will start with the first one. Vidya would like to know what's your view on auditing AI from suppliers to ensure it's developed only as a force for the good, as you can say.
I have so many questions here.
Yes. So what kind of mechanisms do you think would be best to put in auditing the AI from suppliers in order to make sure its purpose, it's only used for the intended purpose?
I think if you start with the AI, you need to make sure that data is actually protected, so you are compliant. I think that when you do an audit, of course you need to look at regulations, what is required, and depending on if you need to be compliant to GDPR or other regulations, you need to take the approach of protecting your different data in a way that is compliant. You know, if it's PCI DSS data, if it's PII data, if it's healthcare data, and it can be different for different countries and regions. So my approach is to look at where are you operating, what data are you processing, and then take maybe a very conservative approach and see what are the most stringent regulations here, and create that as a baseline and see can you meet that baseline, and that should keep you pretty safe.
All right. I really like the idea of taking the regulations as the baseline and taking the strictest regulation as a baseline, because that should never be where we stop in the way we handle the data, but rather to take into importance that. Okay. Our next question is from Stephen. He would ask us, what do you suggest for the internal customers who have drunk the Kool-Aid and think they just have to buy the AI that some snake oil salesman is pitching, throw it at IT, and all their problems will be solved? So really, I think, what do you say as the IT department when you already have a solution or a product that the top management has bought or is trying to buy, even though security-wise, it's not necessarily the best?
Yeah. You know, I find so many organizations that are looking for technology and tools, and they run into a salesperson, and of course they will lead you up the garden path. And I think it's a big mistake to look at to start to look at different technologies and tools. I think you always need to look at start with risk management. So you actually know why are you doing this, and what should you do before you are jumping into how should I do this, what tools should I use, and if you don't take those steps, you will sit with a salesman, and he or she will sell you something.
So really having created a procedure to go forward before talking with the salesman in order to manage the risk and to make sure that all the risk management is settled, definitely. And the procedure that the top management should also apply.
Yeah. And you know, you need to have a good answer to top management and the board. Why do we do this? And why should we spend the money here? And if you don't know why you are doing it and the benefit for the company, they may not ask you to spend the money.
Yeah. The next question is, if ransomware gangs are looking for known keywords, is there not an argument for honeypotting a server stuffed with convincing but fake documents to slow them down and loaded with passive tracking as detection mechanism? So would a honeypot server filled with fake documents work to slow them down and loaded with a passive tracking detection mechanism?
You know, I like detection and honeypots. If you have them in the right place in your network. But then you have so much data that is not going through a honeypot. You have data that is all over the place. So I think even if honeypots are good and great, you should protect the data. The data could be in a home office. The data could be in development environment. The data could be in analytics environments used for machine learning, and so I think you need to protect the data. And if you use a honeypot, that is great, because it's on these systems, the data will look like the real data, and when the attacker is hitting, accessing that data, you get a notice. So I think it's complementary.
All right. The next question is from Val. Will there be an overview of how to use AI tools that introduce new exacerbated security skills? Or, sorry, new security risks, or how it can be applied to the principles of security being presented to increase their strength? So, do you happen to have an overview of all the AI tools that are going to be used for the security risks?
So what we're talking about here, will there be an overview of how the use of AI tools introduces new security risks? If you are using AI tools, they will introduce new security risks. And if you are using the data in machine learning, in generative AI, of course you should be concerned about security risks, because you have more and more use cases that are using your data. And the question is, will there be an overview of the use of? In one of my later slides, I outlined security risks and privacy risks, and how different ways to protect the data can reduce your risk level. So I think that it's a good source to actually talk about security risk and privacy risk. And my reference on that slide was an international standard, ISO standard, for managing security risks, depending on what type of risk do you want to mitigate.
Okay. Would you say that there are new ways and new mechanisms specifically for AI tools, or would there be exactly the same ones, but in a new mixture, let's say, since the risk would kind of remain the same?
I think attackers are going after your data. Attackers, they just want to go into your systems and they want to steal your data in most cases. And depending on what type of risk do you want to mitigate, you should take different security approaches. AI tools are not different. They are just a way to more easily apply access to data. And if there are so many, and more are coming. So if you are not protecting your data, these AI tools will expose you.
So I think this is actually a very good introduction for our next question, which is, what is your view on how to maintain a robust level of cybersecurity with the ever-evolving AI space? How do you maintain that level of cybersecurity?
What is your view on how we maintain a robust level of cybersecurity? I think we talked about this before a little bit. I think the starting point is to look at your risk management situation. And after that, you can talk about and discuss how and what you want to do, and the how boils down to AI and other tools you use, because AI is just a new way, or not new, but it's a way for applications, AI applications, to access your data. And if you want to have a robust level of cybersecurity, you need to start with the risk management and use a framework. There are different frameworks that actually can help you to cover different aspects. And if you're not protecting your data, it can be exposed to not just AI and AI tools, but also to all kind of different operations and tools. So you need to really go down and see what type of data do you have, and how should I comply for different types of data and use cases. I think that's kind of a starting point, because AI is moving so fast. And AI, for example, machine learning, it's just a different way to access your data. And if your data is not protected, your cybersecurity will not be compliant. So I think you need to look at the data and see, what type of data do I have? What compliance do I need to apply? And then use cases. What use cases do I have to actually protect and be able to use the data so my business operations actually can work? AI is not different.
Yeah. The next question is, what do you think about the USA's efforts to require licensing for LLM development? A bit in another direction completely.
Which one are we talking about here?
Chris's question. So the USA's potential efforts to require licensing for LLM development.
LLM is interesting and very powerful. I think that, for example, and I think I mentioned it before here, if you go to OpenAI, it can be very powerful. But you may not know where the data is coming from. So I think from a legal perspective, it can be an issue. You don't know what data your machine learning is based on. If you go to, as I mentioned before, if you go to Microsoft, they are giving you some level of protection from that point of view. Some, I would say some level of protection. So if you want to be very conservative, you may want to train your data on something that you know. You may want to know where it is coming from. It will be limited, but at least you know what data you are using for your training of machine learning. And I think if you do not have these precautions, you may be out in a very scary situation from a legal perspective. Think about if your machine learning is based on data that is licensed, data that is regulated, and you are not aware of that, it can be an issue. But at least Microsoft is giving you some assurance. And if you are using data for machine learning that you actually know where it's coming from, then you are in a good place.
All right. And our last question is about the AI use in our own advantage. Can you use AI to stay one step ahead and continually evolve defensive data?
You stay one step ahead and continue on. Yeah, I think it's important to use AI. And defending data, using AI for security, I think it's important. Because if you have millions or billions of events, you cannot ask a human person to analyze that and find attacks on data. So I think it's getting worse and worse. So you need to apply AI to augment the people that are defending our data. Is it perfect? No, but I think it can help the humans to actually filter out what attacks should I look at.
So within the use of analyzing better the incidents, and in that sense, we can definitely use AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if we are not doing that, we cannot we cannot be one step ahead.
Yeah. Dalim, over to you.
Thank you very much, Diana. That was really good. And likewise, David, thank you very much for the technical work you're doing in the background. But especially, of course, Ulf, thanks very much for another very insightful session that you've delivered to us at the BCS London branches. And to everyone online, I'm sure you will appreciate the depth of information you've got there and the chance to have a good look through that later, which of course you'll get when the video is prepared, Ulf has approved it, and it's attached to our website. So do keep on enjoying, keep on coming to our sessions, and we look forward to seeing you next time at the BCS London branch. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Okay.